The envelope arrived on black paper, sealed with wax the color of old blood. Livia Romano held it against the laboratory light, watching shadows move inside like something alive. Outside, the city belonged to him. Every brick, every shadow, every silence. But beneath it, in the contaminated soil, her instruments could read like a confession. The truth was hers. She broke the seal. Inside, an invitation. Dinner. Tonight. No question mark. Men like Alessandro Vieri didn't ask. But land didn't negotiate either. Simply remembered. And what she'd found beneath his empire would not stay buried. Please like, share and subscribe and comment where you are watching from. Livia set the invitation on her desk between soil core samples and spectrometry reports. Column after column of numbers that told a story Alessandro's accountants would never see. Chromium. Lead. Industrial solvents banned 15 years ago. All of it bleeding through aquifers that fed half the city. She'd found the dumping site 3 weeks ago. 40 acres of what property records called commercial development land. What her equipment called a toxic grave. The phone on her desk buzzed. Her supervisor's name. Romano, I'm told you're meeting with the Vieri group tonight. Livia closed the lab report. I sent them preliminary findings. They requested a discussion. That family doesn't discuss. They dictate. His voice carried the weight of experience. Be careful what you put in writing. It's already in the municipal filing. Public record as of this morning. Silence. Then quietly, God help you. The line went dead. That evening, Livia dressed in charcoal gray. Professional. Unmoved. She pulled her dark hair back, applied minimal makeup, fastened her grandmother's silver watch. In the mirror she looked exactly like what she was. A civil servant with evidence. Not a woman walking into a predator's territory. The restaurant occupied a building older than the country itself. No sign. No menu in the window. Just a door and a man in a black suit who opened it before she could knock. Ms. Romano. This way. The interior smelled of expensive wine and older money. Leather booths. Dark wood. Conversations happening in whispers. Every table full, but the silence suggested these diners had been invited to perform normalcy. Background actors in someone else's scene. The guard led her past them all, through a doorway curtained in burgundy velvet, into a private room where a single table waited. And the man who owned the silence. Alessandro Vieri stood when she entered. Not a courtesy, an assessment. He was taller than she expected. Late 50s, silver threading through dark hair, wearing a suit that cost more than her annual salary. His face carried the kind of stillness that came from never being questioned. Ms. Romano. His voice was smooth. The accent carefully preserved. Thank you for coming. Mr. Vieri. She didn't extend her hand. Neither did he. They understood each other already. He gestured to the chair across from him. She sat. Between them, the table held wine, water, 2 empty glasses. No food yet. This wasn't about dinner. Alessandro poured wine with steady hands. I received your report. Interesting reading. Accurate reading. According to your instruments. He slid the glass toward her. She didn't touch it. Instruments can be miscalibrated. These weren't. Data can be misinterpreted. Not by me. The corner of his mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. You're very certain. I'm very thorough. He leaned back, studying her with dark eyes that had assessed 1,000 threats and eliminated most of them. The land in question has been commercially zoned for decades. Multiple projects. Previous assessments showed no contamination. Previous assessments were inadequate. Or purchased. She met his gaze without flinching. Mine isn't for sale. The temperature in the room dropped. Alessandro was accustomed to fear dressed as respect. To carefully worded objections that left room for negotiation. This woman sat across from him like she was presenting a weather report. Factual. Inevitable. Unconcerned with his response. It had been 30 years since anyone spoke to him this way. He found it remarkably attractive. And deeply inconvenient. You've filed this report publicly, he said. Required by law. Before meeting with the property owner. You're not listed as the property owner. Vieri Holdings is. A corporation has no feelings to spare. But it has lawyers. So does the Environmental Protection Agency. She finally reached for the water, not the wine. I'm not here to negotiate, Mr. Vieri. I'm here because you requested this meeting. If you'd like to discuss remediation timelines, I have recommendations. And if I'd like to discuss the report disappearing? She took a sip of water. Set down the glass with precision. Then you've wasted an evening and an expensive bottle of wine. Alessandro felt something shift in his chest. Surprise. Irritation. A third thing he didn't want to name yet. You understand who I am, he said quietly. Yes. What I'm capable of. I imagine quite a lot. Her expression didn't change. None of it will alter chromium levels in groundwater. Livia watched him process this. Watched a man used to immediate compliance encounter an immovable object. She knew what he was. The city knew. The missing competitors. The sudden property transfers. The way certain investigations lost funding or witnesses lost memory. But soil didn't fear reputation. The contamination is spreading, she continued. In 6 months, it reaches the residential aquifer. In 12, it's in the city water supply. No amount of influence prevents chemistry. You're suggesting I'm responsible for this contamination. I'm stating that Vieri Holdings owns the source property. Remediation is your legal obligation. I'm offering 18 months before federal intervention becomes mandatory. 18 months. To fund a cleanup that will cost approximately $40 million. She retrieved a folder from her bag. Slid it across the table. Timeline. Contractors. Methodology. All within legal parameters. He didn't open the folder. And if I pursue other options? Such as having these findings reviewed by more flexible assessors. You'll receive the same data. Lead doesn't negotiate. Filing counterstudies. Challenging methodologies. Which delays remediation and expands contamination. When the federal government takes over in 2 years, the cost will be $70 million. Plus criminal penalties. She paused. Plus reputational damage even your family can't absorb. Alessandro studied her in the candlelight. Young. Composed. Absolutely unafraid. Either foolish or operating from a position of power he didn't yet understand. He always preferred the second option. You've thought this through, he observed. It's my job. Your job is environmental assessment. This sounds like strategy. Strategy would involve leverage. I have none. Just deadlines. She stood. Thank you for the meeting, Mr. Vieri. My contact information is in the report. You're leaving. Unless you'd like to discuss remediation contractors. He rose, moving between her and the door with the fluid grace of a man who controlled every space he entered. Not blocking her path. His present. Have dinner with me, he said. I've given you the information you need. I'm not talking about the land. Livia met his eyes. Saw the calculation there. The chess player deciding whether she was a piece or an opponent. I'm not interested in being convinced, bought, or intimidated, Mr. Vieri. I'm aware. I'm interested in understanding why. Why I won't be corrupted. Why you're not afraid. She smiled for the first time. It didn't reach her eyes. I am afraid. I'm simply more afraid of what happens if I do nothing. Then she stepped around him and walked out. Alessandro stood in the empty room, listening to her footsteps fade. The folder lay unopened on the table. Around him, the restaurant continued its performance of normalcy. He'd survived 3 decades by reading people. By knowing which pressure points would yield compliance. Money. Fear. Ambition. Ego. Everyone had a price or weakness. Livia Romano seemed to operate on a completely different economy. His phone buzzed. His consigliere Marco. How did it go? Alessandro stared at the folder. She's either the most dangerous woman I've ever met or the most honest. Which one concerns you more? I haven't decided yet. 3 days later, Livia was running spectral analysis on samples from a different site when her lab phone rang. Romano. Ms. Romano, this is Victoria Chin from Blackstone Environmental. We received your remediation proposal for the Vieri Holdings property. Livia straightened. Blackstone was one of the contractors she'd recommended. Expensive but thorough. I haven't heard from Vieri Holdings yet. They've requested a meeting with you. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. At the property site. Mr. Vieri will be there? According to his office, yes. After she hung up, Livia sat very still. Alessandro Vieri didn't attend site meetings. He sent lawyers, accountants, men in expensive suits who negotiated down to the minimum legal requirement. His presence meant something had changed. She wasn't sure if that was progress or danger. The property sat 20 miles outside the city center, surrounded by a chain-link fence and warning signs that predated her birth. Beyond it, 40 acres of scrubland and industrial debris. Concrete foundations from demolished buildings. Rusted equipment slowly surrendering to weeds. And beneath it all, a chemical nightmare seeping toward the water table. Livia arrived at 8:45. The Blackstone team was already there. 3 engineers in field gear reviewing her data on tablets. They greeted her professionally, asked intelligent questions, treated her expertise with respect. At precisely 9 a.m., 2 black SUVs pulled through the gate. Alessandro emerged from the first vehicle wearing different armor. No suit today. Dark jeans, leather jacket, boots meant for uneven ground. He looked younger. Dangerous in a different way. Behind him, 4 men in similar casual wear. Security, obviously. They fanned out with practiced efficiency. Alessandro approached the group, nodding to the Blackstone lead before his gaze found Livia. Ms. Romano. Mr. Vieri. Thank you for coming. It's my job. That almost smile again. Of course. The site inspection took 3 hours. Livia walked Alessandro and the engineers through the contamination zones, explaining how industrial solvents had been dumped directly onto unlined soil, how decades of rain had pushed the plume deeper, how it was now approaching the geological formation that fed the aquifer. Alessandro listened without interrupting. Asked precise questions. Watched her more than the contaminated earth. When they reached the northwestern corner, the deepest contamination, Livia knelt and took a fresh sample. The soil came up dark, almost black, smelling of petroleum and something sharper. This is the source point, she said. Based on chemical composition and concentration, dumping occurred here for at least 5 years. Sometime in the late 90s. Alessandro stood above her, backlit by winter sun. You can determine timeline from soil? Chemical degradation rates. Weather pattern data. Soil core stratification. She sealed the sample. This didn't happen overnight. Someone brought trucks here regularly. 25 years ago. Yes. Before I controlled this territory. Livia stood meeting his eyes. I'm not investigating who's responsible for contamination. I'm assessing what exists now and what needs to happen next. But you have theories. I have data. Data doesn't care about attribution. One of the engineers called out a question. Livia excused herself, leaving Alessandro at the contamination epicenter, staring at Earth that remembered what he'd spent decades making everyone forget. That evening, Alessandro sat in his study reviewing files his people had compiled on Livia Romano. Born in the city. Father dead when she was 8. Mother worked 3 jobs to put her through university. Graduated top of her class. Master's degree in environmental science. 6 years with the Municipal Assessment Division. Exemplary record. No debts. No vices. No pressure points. She lived in a modest apartment. Drove a 7-year-old sedan. Had a cat named Mercury. Visited her mother every Sunday. She was exactly what she appeared to be. Alessandro couldn't remember the last time that was true of anyone in his orbit. Marco entered without knocking. The engineers say remediation is feasible. 42 million over 18 months. And if we delay? The contamination spreads exactly as she predicted. Federal involvement becomes inevitable. Costs double. Criminal investigations begin. Marco set down a second folder. She's not bluffing, Alessandro. This is chemistry, not politics. Alessandro closed Livia's file. I want 24-hour security on her. Marco's eyebrows rose. You think someone will move against her? I think I'm not the only person with interests in that property. And I think she's too honest to understand how dangerous that makes her. You barely know her. Alessandro stood, moving to the window. Below, the city spread out like a kingdom. His kingdom built on violence and silence and the kind of power that made problems disappear. But Livia Romano wasn't a problem that could disappear. She was a truth that wouldn't stay buried. Find out who owned that land in the 90s, he said quietly. And who benefited from those dumping permits? Alessandro. I want to know who put her in my path. After Marco left, Alessandro remained at the window. Somewhere out there, Livia was probably in her laboratory running tests on samples that would damn whoever she found. Unmoved by reputation or threat. He'd built an empire on fear. She operated on principle. He wanted to know if one could survive the other. 2 weeks later, Livia was leaving the municipal building when a man stepped into her path. Not threatening. Just present. Expensive coat. Professional smile. Ms. Romano? Davidson. I represent interested parties regarding the Vieri Holdings assessment. Livia adjusted her bag. The report is public record, Mr. Chin. No representation necessary. Of course. I was hoping we could discuss alternative interpretations of the data. The data isn't open to interpretation. Everything is open to interpretation, given proper context. He produced a business card. My clients are willing to fund an independent review. Substantial compensation for your expertise. Your clients can access the same public data I used. We'd prefer your cooperation. His smile never wavered. It would be considerably easier than the alternative. Livia took the card. Read it. Handed it back. Thank you, no. Ms. Romano. I've given my answer. She walked past him toward her car. Felt his gaze following. The card had listed a law firm she recognized. One that represented developers' industrial concerns, the kind of clients who viewed environmental regulation as negotiable. Someone wanted her findings to change. Someone who wasn't Alessandro. She was unlocking her car when she noticed the second man. Leaning against a nearby vehicle. Not hiding. Just watching. When she pulled out of the parking lot, he followed. Not closely. Not obviously. But consistently. Livia drove her usual route home, checking her mirrors. The car maintained distance but never disappeared. Professional surveillance. Instead of going to her apartment, she drove to her mother's house. Parked on the street. The following car stopped 3 houses down. Her mother met her at the door, concerned. Livia? It's Thursday. I know. Can I come in? Inside, over tea, Livia explained nothing and everything. Her mother listened with the expression of a woman who'd survived raising a daughter alone in a city that ate the vulnerable. You're being careful? She asked finally. Always. These people you've challenged. I haven't challenged anyone. I've reported facts. Her mother reached across the table, gripping her hand. Facts challenge power, Livia. Power doesn't like being questioned. Then power should stop poisoning groundwater. After an hour, Livia left. The car was still there. When she drove home, it followed again. Parked across from her building as she went inside. She stood at her apartment window, looking down at it. Unmarked. Dark. Patient. Either a threat or protection. She wasn't sure which frightened her more. The next morning, her supervisor called her into his office. You're being reassigned, he said without preamble. Livia remained standing. To what? Parks Division. Air quality monitoring. The Vieri assessment will be completed by someone with more seniority. I'm the most qualified assessor in this division. You're also the youngest. And the most vulnerable to accusations of bias. Livia felt ice in her stomach. Someone complained. Multiple parties have raised concerns about your methodology. Suggested your findings may be influenced by inexperience. My methodology is textbook. My findings are reproducible. I'm sure they are. He wouldn't meet her eyes. This comes from above me, Romano. I'm sorry. How far above you? He finally looked at her. Far enough that my opinion doesn't matter. Livia left the building in daylight, her career rerouted, her assessment about to be buried under senior review. She walked 3 blocks before the anger transformed into something colder. They thought this was over. They were wrong. She pulled out her phone and made a call she'd been avoiding. Alessandro answered on the second ring. Ms. Romano. I need to meet with you. When? Now. Silence. Then, I'll send a car. No. Somewhere public. The Botanical Gardens. 1 hour. She hung up before he could respond. Alessandro stood among winter roses when Livia arrived. No guards visible, though he knew they were positioned throughout the gardens. He watched her approach. Same professional clothing, same composed expression. But something had changed. She was angry. "They're burying the assessment," she said without greeting. "I heard." "You heard." "An hour ago. 3 different parties filed complaints about your methodology. Your supervisor received a call from the mayor's office." Livia stared at him. "You knew before I did." "I make it my business to know things." "Then you know who's behind it." "Yes." "Tell me." Alessandro studied her. The fury barely controlled. The principle about to override survival instinct. "Why?" "Because if you're involved, I need to know. If you're not, I need to understand what I'm facing. And if I am involved? Then I've already lost and we're wasting time." He almost smiled. "I'm not involved. In fact, I'm actively working against the parties responsible." "Why?" "Because you were right. The contamination is real. The timeline is accurate. And the people trying to bury your findings are the same ones who created the problem 25 years ago." Livia's expression shifted. "You know who dumped there. I know who owned the permits. Who controlled the territory before I did. Who have reasons to ensure this stays buried." He stepped closer. "And I know they'll consider you a threat." "I'm not afraid." "You should be." His voice dropped. "These aren't men who negotiate, Livia. They eliminate obstacles." The use of her first name hung between them. "Then why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. Alessandro looked at her in the winter light. This woman who wouldn't bend, who treated truth like something sacred. Who'd walked into his world armed with nothing but data and principle. "Because I don't want you eliminated," he said. They sat on a bench surrounded by dormant gardens. Alessandro explained what his investigation had uncovered. A consortium of developers who'd controlled industrial waste disposal in the 90s. Men who'd paid for permits and then ignored regulations. Who'd profited while poisoning land. Men who still had significant political influence. "The car following me," Livia said. "That's yours. Protection, not surveillance." "I didn't ask for protection." "You didn't need to ask." Alessandro turned toward her. "These men will try money first. When that fails, they'll try intimidation. When that fails, they'll try violence." "Yes." Livia processed this. "And you're protecting me because?" "Because you're right. Because the contamination needs to be cleaned. Because..." He stopped. "Because what?" Alessandro met her eyes. "Because I'm tired of profiting from poison." The admission surprised them both. Livia stood walking a few steps away. "If you want redemption, Mr. Vieri, $40 million will buy quite a lot of it." "I don't want redemption. I want..." He caught himself again. She turned back. "What do you want?" The gardens were empty except for them. His guards invisible. The city noise distant. Alessandro stood, closing the space between them. "To be the kind of man you'd have dinner with voluntarily," he said quietly. Livia's breath caught. "You don't know me." "I know enough. You're honest in a dishonest world. Brave when you should be terrified. Stubborn enough to face me with nothing but data." He smiled slightly. "I find it remarkable. I'm not interested in being a novelty, Mr. Vieri." "Alessandro. And you're not a novelty. You're..." He stopped. Started again. "You're the first real thing I've encountered in 30 years. Livia should walk away. Should maintain professional distance. Should remember what he was, what he'd done, the empire built on violence. But something in his eyes was devastatingly honest. "I have conditions," she heard herself say. "Name them." "The assessment moves forward. Full remediation. No delays, no compromises." "Agreed." "You identify everyone involved in the original dumping. Give me names, dates, evidence." "Done." "And you keep your distance until this is finished. No dinners. No personal conversations. Nothing that compromises the process." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "How long?" "Until the land is clean." 18 months. "Yes." He considered this. Nodded slowly. "I can wait 18 months. You barely know me." "I know enough." He pulled out his phone, typed something. "I'm sending you Marco's contact information. My consigliere. He'll coordinate security and information sharing. If you need anything." "I won't." If you need anything, he continued, call him. He has instructions to provide whatever you require. Protection. And resources. You've been reassigned, but I can fund independent continuation of your assessment. Hire the laboratory time. Secure the legal standing. Livia shook her head. I won't be bought. You're not being bought. I'm funding completion of work that's already yours. The findings remain yours. The methodology remains yours. I'm simply ensuring the process isn't sabotaged. That's still strategy, Alessandro finished. Not corruption. I'm not paying you to change results. I'm paying to ensure you can produce them. She wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it. Principle demanded she accept. 18 months, she said finally. Then we discuss what happens next. 18 months, Alessandro agreed. Over the following weeks, Livia watched her professional isolation evaporate and reform as something else entirely. Her reassignment was quietly reversed after 3 city council members suddenly discovered concerns about Parks Division staffing. Her laboratory requests received priority approval. The Blackstone engineers began treating her like a lead consultant rather than a municipal employee. Someone was moving pieces on her behalf. Someone who kept his distance exactly as promised. She didn't see Alessandro, but she felt his influence. The car that followed her to work. The immediate responses to her requests. The way certain obstacles simply vanished before she encountered them. She should have felt controlling. Instead, it felt like being valued. 6 weeks after the botanical gardens, Livia was reviewing core samples when Marco appeared at her laboratory door. Ms. Romano. Do you have a moment? She set down the sample. What's wrong? Nothing. Alessandro asked me to deliver this. He placed a sealed envelope on her desk. Thicker than the first invitation. You're not obligated to open it. But I should. That's your decision. After he left, Livia stared at the envelope. Black paper again. No wax seal this time. Just her name in elegant script. She opened it. Inside. A complete dossier on the 1990s dumping operation. Names. Companies. Permits approved with forged signatures. Financial trails showing payoffs to inspectors. Photographs of trucks at the site. Everything she'd need to build a criminal case. And a note in the same elegant handwriting. The land remembers. Now the record will too. Livia sat very still, holding evidence that would destroy powerful men. Evidence that Alessandro had gathered and given to her freely. Evidence that proved he was serious about this. About the remediation. About her. She filed the dossier in her secure cabinet and returned to her samples, trying to ignore the way her heart was beating faster. Trying to pretend she wasn't counting the months remaining. 3 months into the 18-month timeline, the first attack came. Not against Livia. Against Alessandro's businesses. Fire at a warehouse. Inspection violations at 2 restaurants. 3 longtime partners suddenly nervous about their associations. The kind of pressure designed to cost money and patience. Marco briefed her because Alessandro had instructed him to keep her informed. They're trying to make the remediation too expensive, Marco explained. Force him to choose between his empire and the cleanup. Will he? Livia asked. Choose. Marco smiled slightly. He's already spent $8 million beyond the initial budget to protect you and fund this project. I don't think expense is his concern. Then what is? That you'll think he's not serious. That this will damage your opinion of him. Livia processed this. He cares what I think? Ms. Romano, he cares about very little else these days. That night, Livia broke her own rule. She called Alessandro directly. He answered immediately. Livia. Just her name. No question. Like he'd been waiting. Marco briefed me on the attacks against your businesses. It's handled. I don't want you sacrificing your interests for this project. Silence. Then carefully, this project is my interest. The remediation. You. The word hung between them across the phone line. Simple. Devastating. True. Alessandro. I'm not sacrificing anything, he continued. I'm investing in something that matters more than property and influence. I'm investing in becoming someone worthy of your time. You don't need to prove anything. I do. To myself. Pause. We agreed on 18 months. I'm honoring that. But I won't pretend I'm not counting days. Livia closed her eyes, gripped tight on the phone. 15 months left. 447 days. You've calculated it? Daily. She should end this call. Maintain distance. Remember the conditions. Instead she asked, "Are you safe?" The question surprised them both. "Yes," Alessandro said quietly. "Are you? Your people follow me everywhere." "That's not what I asked." Livia looked around her apartment. Mercury curled on the couch. Lab reports on the coffee table. The life she'd built on principle and stubbornness. "I'm safe," she said. "But I'm tired." "Of the project? Of being alone in it?" More silence. "Then, you're not alone." "I know. That's what frightens me." "Why?" "Because every professional email felt personal. Every security measure felt like affection. Every piece of evidence he provided felt like trust she didn't know how to reciprocate. Because she was starting to depend on his invisible presence. Because 15 months felt simultaneously too long and not long enough. "Because I don't know how to want something I can't have yet," she admitted. Alessandro's breath caught audibly. "Livia." 15 months, she interrupted. "We agreed." "We did. Good night, Alessandro." "Good night." She ended the call and sat in the silence, wondering if wanting someone from a distance was safer than having them close. Wondering if her heart would survive the wait either way. The attacks escalated over the next month. Not against Alessandro directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, his suppliers received anonymous tips about health violations. His legitimate businesses faced surprise audits. 3 properties under Vieri Holdings suddenly discovered zoning complications. Death by 1,000 bureaucratic cuts. Livia watched it happen through Marco's careful briefings and her own research. She recognized the pattern. The same developers who dumped toxics were now using the system against the man trying to clean them up. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so dangerous. She was working late at the laboratory when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Romano, this is Thomas Castellano. I believe we should talk." Livia's hand tightened on the phone. Castellano Development. One of the names in Alessandro's dossier. One of the men who'd profited from poisoning land. "About what, Mr. Castellano?" "About your future. And the unfortunate situation you found yourself in." His voice was smooth, grandfatherly. "I understand you've become entangled with Alessandro Vieri. I'm conducting an environmental assessment. You're being used, my dear. Vieri is manipulating you to damage his competitors. Surely you see that." "I see contamination data. Nothing else." "Data can be misrepresented. Vieri has considerable resources to ensure results match his agenda." Livia stood, pacing her small laboratory. "The samples are independently verified. The methodology is standard. This isn't about agenda." "Everything is about agenda, Ms. Romano. Even noble causes." "Pause. I'd like to offer you an alternative. A position with a private environmental firm. Triple your current salary. Complete autonomy. All we ask is that you review the Vieri assessment with fresh eyes." "You're asking me to falsify findings." "I'm asking you to be thorough. To consider that you may have been influenced." "No. Ms. Romano." "My answer is no. Don't call again." She ended the call, hands shaking. Within an hour, Marco appeared at her laboratory. "Castellano contacted you." "It wasn't a question." "How did you know?" "Because his phone records show a call to this number 20 minutes ago." Marco's expression was grim. "What did he offer?" "Money. A job. The usual corruption." "And you refused." "Obviously." Marco studied her. "You understand this makes you more dangerous to them, not less." "I understand they're running out of options." "Running out of options makes desperate men violent, Ms. Romano." Livia met his eyes. "Then they should have cleaned up their mess 25 years ago." That night, Livia couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Castellano's words. "You're being used." The suggestion that Alessandro was manipulating her, that her findings were somehow compromised by his influence. It was strategic. Plant doubt. Make her question her own judgment. But what if there was truth in it? She'd accepted his funding, his protection, his evidence. How much of her process was still truly independent? At 2 a.m. she gave up on sleep and reviewed her raw data. Every sample, every test, every calculation, looking for bias she might have missed. The numbers didn't change. The contamination was real. Her methodology was sound. Alessandro's involvement hadn't altered chemistry, but it had altered her. The next morning she called Alessandro. He answered immediately, voice alert despite the early hour. Livia. What's wrong? Castellano called me yesterday. Silence. Then very quietly, what did he want? To buy me. When that failed, to make me doubt myself. Are you doubting yourself? She looked at the data spread across her desk. No. But I'm doubting my judgment in other areas. Which areas? This. Whatever this is becoming. More silence. When Alessandro spoke again, his voice carried careful control. What are you asking me, Livia? Are you using me? Is this remediation just a way to damage your competitors? No. How can I trust that? Because I'm cleaning land I never contaminated, spending money I'll never recover, and protecting a woman who won't even have dinner with me. A breath. If I were using you, I'd be getting much better return on investment. Despite everything, Livia almost smiled. That's a terrible argument. It's an honest one. Alessandro. You want proof? I'll give you proof. Marco will send you the financial records. Every payment. Every contract. Every dollar spent on this project. You'll see exactly what I'm investing and why. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. I'm offering. Because you deserve to know that this is real. His voice dropped. That what I feel is real. Livia's breath caught. We agreed not to. I know what we agreed. I'm honoring it. But I won't lie to you, Livia. Not even by omission. You asked if I'm using you. The truth is the opposite. You're changing me. The financial records arrived within hours. Livia spent an entire evening reviewing them. Alessandro hadn't exaggerated. He'd spent 12 million so far. Remediation planning, security for her, legal fees defending against the consortium's attacks, laboratory funding. None of it recoverable. All of it defensive spending that weakened his position against rivals who were circling like sharks. He was sacrificing territory to clean land. Sacrificing power to prove himself to her. The realization settled in her chest like something heavy and warm and terrifying. 2 weeks later, Livia was reviewing contractor bids when her mother called. There's a man here asking about you. Livia's blood went cold. Where are you? At home. He's on the porch. Says he's from a law firm, but... Her mother's voice dropped. He doesn't feel like a lawyer, Livia. Lock the doors. Don't let him in. I'm calling Marco. She hung up and dialed. Marco answered on the first ring. Ms. Romano. Someone's at my mother's house. Send security. Now. Already done. Team is 3 minutes out. How did you? We monitor her address too. The moment an unfamiliar vehicle parked outside, we were alerted. His voice was steady, calming. She's safe. Stay on the line with me. Livia paced her laboratory, heart pounding. This is escalating. Yes. They're threatening my mother. They're probing for weakness. They won't find it. Marco. Your mother is under protection now. Permanent detail. They won't get close to her again. Livia closed her eyes. I never wanted this. I know. But you have it. And we're handling it. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Finally, Marco spoke again. Team is on site. The man is leaving. We're following him. Did he try anything? No. Just knocked, asked questions, left when your mother wouldn't answer. Pause. Livia, you should know. Alessandro is already on his way to you. I didn't ask. He knew you'd need to see your mother. He's arranging transport. I can drive myself. Not safely. Not tonight. Alessandro arrived at her laboratory 20 minutes later. Livia opened the door to find him in the hallway, still wearing a suit from whatever meeting he'd left. Behind him, 2 guards waited at a discreet distance. Your mother is fine, he said immediately. Security is in place. Nothing will happen to her. You promise things you can't guarantee. I guarantee the cost of trying will be too high. He stepped closer, not touching but present. Marco briefed me. Are you all right? No. I'm furious. Good. Use it. Livia looked up at him. They threaten my mother because they can't threaten me. They threatened her because they're desperate. The cleanup begins in 2 weeks. Once remediation starts, their criminal exposure becomes permanent. They're running out of time. So they're getting dangerous. Yes. Alessandro's jaw tightened. Which is why I'm pulling additional security. For you, your mother, anyone connected to this project. That's non-negotiable. His voice carried absolute authority. You can be angry about it. You can resent the intrusion. But you will be protected. I don't take orders from you. This isn't an order. It's a fact. I'm protecting what matters to me, Livia. You don't get a vote. The possessiveness should have irritated her. Instead it felt like safety. I need to see my mother, she said quietly. I know. The car is waiting. They drove through the city in silence. Alessandro sat beside her in the back seat, not touching, just present. Livia watched the streets pass, thinking about how quickly her controlled, principled life had spiraled into something from a thriller. I'm sorry, Alessandro said quietly. He turned to him. For what? For bringing this into your world. If I'd handled the consortium differently. They created this problem decades ago. You're the only one trying to fix it. By putting you in danger. I put myself here. I filed that report knowing what it might cost. She paused. I just didn't expect it to cost you this much. Alessandro looked at her in the dim car interior. You're not a cost, Livia. You're the reason I'm still fighting. The admission hung between them. 14 months left, Livia whispered. 423 days. You're still counting. I've never stopped. Her mother's house was lit up like a fortress. 2 discreet vehicles on the street. A guard at the door who nodded to Alessandro with obvious respect. Inside, her mother was making tea with hands that only shook slightly. Mama. Livia embraced her. I'm fine, Cara. Just startled. She pulled back, looking past Livia to Alessandro. And you must be the reason my daughter has bodyguards. Alessandro inclined his head. Mrs. Romano. I apologize for the intrusion. The intrusion is the man who came to my door asking threatening questions disguised as polite conversation. She studied him with the shrewd gaze of a woman who'd survived hard years. You're Alessandro Vieri. Yes, ma'am. The man my daughter speaks of carefully. Livia flushed. Mama. A mother notices things. She gestured to the kitchen table. Sit. Both of you. You'll have tea and you'll explain why powerful men are threatening civil servants. Over tea, Alessandro explained the situation with careful honesty. The contamination. The consortium. The attacks. Her mother listened without interrupting, occasionally glancing at Livia with an expression that suggested she'd suspected something like this. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. This cleanup, she said finally. It's costing you a fortune. Yes. And making you enemies. Yes. Why do it? Alessandro looked at Livia. Because your daughter asked me to. Because it's the right thing. Because I'm tired of profiting from shortcuts and silence. And because I want to be someone worthy of her respect. Mrs. Romano set down her teacup with precision. You're in love with her. Mama. Livia protested. But Alessandro didn't look away. Yes. The simple admission stopped Livia's breath. Her mother nodded slowly. And you, Cara? Livia's hands tightened around her cup. We have an agreement. Professional distance until the remediation is complete. That's not what I asked. Mama. Livia. Her mother's voice softened. I raised you to be principled, strong, uncompromising in your values. But I never meant for you to be alone in them. I'm not alone. Aren't you? She glanced at Alessandro, then back to Livia. This man is spending millions to clean poison he didn't create. Making enemies to protect you. Counting days until he's allowed to have dinner with you. And you sit here pretending it's only professional. It has to be. Until the project is done. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing, Cara. Trust me. I learned that when your father died. She reached across the table, gripping Livia's hand. Principle is important. But so is recognizing when someone is trying to be worthy of you. They left an hour later. Alessandro insisted on additional security for the house. Cameras, regular patrols, direct line to his people. Mrs. Romano accepted it with grace and a knowing look at her daughter. In the car, silence stretched between them. Finally, Livia spoke. I'm sorry about my mother. Don't be. She's remarkable. She's meddling. She's protective. I understand the instinct. More silence. Then, Alessandro. Yes. What you said. About being in love. Was true. And I shouldn't have said it. He looked out the window. We have an agreement. I'm not trying to pressure you or change the terms. But when asked directly, I won't lie. Livia's chest felt tight. This makes everything more complicated. I know. We still have 14 months. I know that too. Can you really wait that long? Alessandro turned to her, his dark eyes holding hers in the passing streetlights. Livia, I've waited 30 years to feel something real. 14 months is nothing. The remediation began on schedule. Massive excavators arrived at the contamination site. Engineers in hazmat suits took fresh samples. Trucks lined up to transport contaminated soil to licensed disposal facilities. Livia stood at the fence line, watching decades of poison being carefully extracted from earth that had absorbed it like memory. Beside her, the Blackstone project manager reviewed tablet readings. Initial excavation confirms your assessment, he said. Contamination is exactly where and how deep you predicted. The scope might actually be slightly less than estimated. Good. Ms. Romano? He lowered the tablet. I've been doing this work for 15 years. This is the most thoroughly documented remediation I've ever seen. Your methodology is textbook perfect. Thank you. I just wanted you to know, in case anyone tries to question it later, this is impeccable work. After he left, Livia remained at the fence, watching the excavators tear into poisoned ground. She felt someone approach. Turned to find Alessandro, dressed for the site in work boots and a leather jacket, hands in pockets. You came, she said. It's my land. My responsibility. He looked at the excavators. And your victory. It's not a victory yet. It's progress. That's enough. He glanced at her. How are you? Better. My mother has adjusted to having security. She's actually enjoying it. Apparently one of your guards is an excellent cook and has been sharing recipes. Alessandro smiled slightly. Marco mentioned she's been feeding the team. Of course she has. They stood together watching Earth being healed. 3 weeks since the attack on your businesses, Livia said quietly. Any more trouble? Nothing I can't handle. Alessandro. They're testing boundaries. Trying to find pressure points. They won't find any. Because you have none? Because my only pressure point is standing beside me and she's untouchable. Livia's breath caught. That's not fair. What isn't? Saying things like that when we have 13 months left. Would you prefer I lie? I'd prefer you make this easier. Alessandro turned to face her fully. Do you want to know what would make this easier for me? What? If you'd admit you feel something too. If I knew I wasn't alone in this waiting. Livia looked at him. This powerful, dangerous man who'd restructured his empire and made himself vulnerable for the chance to earn her trust. You're not alone, she whispered. His eyes closed briefly. Livia. But we still have an agreement. And I need to honor it. Why? If we both feel. Because I need to know this is real. That it's not just proximity or danger or obsession. She met his gaze. In 13 months, when the land is clean and I have no professional reason to be in your life, I need to know you'll still want me there. I will. Then you can wait. Alessandro stared at her for a long moment. Then nodded slowly. 13 months. 396 days. You really do count them. Every single one. 6 weeks into remediation, Livia received an unexpected visitor at her laboratory. Dr. James Morrison. Environmental scientist. Published researcher. Someone she'd studied in graduate school. Dr. Morrison? She stood surprised. I didn't know you were in the city. I'm consulting on the Vieri Holdings remediation. Blackstone requested peer review of the assessment methodology. He smiled warmly. I wanted to meet the assessor whose work is so precise it needs no correction. They spent an hour discussing her methods, the contamination profile, remediation approach. Morrison asked intelligent questions, complimented her thoroughness, and seemed genuinely impressed. As he was leaving, he paused. Ms. Romano, I'm leading a new environmental institute. Private funding, cutting-edge research. We're recruiting top talent. He handed her a card. I'd love to discuss a position with you. Full research autonomy. Substantial resources. Livia took the card. I'm committed to this project. Of course. I'm thinking long-term. After the Vieri remediation completes. He smiled again. Just something to consider. We could use someone with your integrity. After he left, Livia studied the card. Prestigious institute. Exactly the kind of opportunity she'd dreamed of. She set it aside and returned to her samples, trying to ignore the small voice asking if she'd still want it in 13 months. Asking what she'd want instead. 3 months into remediation, Dr. James Morrison became a regular presence at the site. His peer review expanded into ongoing consultation. He attended progress meetings, reviewed excavation reports, offered technical insights that were genuinely valuable. Livia found herself looking forward to their discussions. Someone who understood the science, who spoke her language, who treated her expertise with respect untainted by power dynamics. He was safe. He was appropriate. He was exactly what she should want. They were reviewing contamination mapping when Morrison asked, "Have you given any thought to the institute position?" Livia looked up from the tablet. "Some. I know the timing is complicated, but I want you to know the offer is genuine. We'd be lucky to have you." "That's generous. It's honest." He smiled. "You're brilliant, Livia. This project proves it. You deserve to work somewhere that values that without complications." The pause was deliberate. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. Morrison gestured at the site. The massive operation, the security presence, the expensive equipment. This remediation. It's professionally impeccable. But the circumstances are unusual. The funding source. The personal protection. The involvement of Alessandro Vieri. Yes. Morrison's expression stayed carefully neutral. "I'm not judging. But I imagine it creates difficulties. Professional and personal." Livia set down the tablet. "My methodology is sound regardless of funding." "I know. That's why I'm offering you a position where your work won't be questioned based on association." He paused. "Where you can build your career without navigating complicated relationships." "Is that what you think this is? A complicated relationship?" "I think you're an exceptional scientist caught in a situation that could limit your future opportunities. I'm offering an alternative." It was logical. Reasonable. Exactly what any mentor would advise. So why did it feel like betrayal? That evening, Livia sat in her apartment trying to focus on data analysis. Mercury curled on her lap, purring. The television played unwatched news. Her phone rang. Alessandro. She'd been avoiding his calls for 3 days. She answered. "Hello. You've been distant." No accusation. Just observation. "I've been busy." "Livia." His voice dropped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." She stood, dislodging Mercury, pacing to the window. "Morrison offered me a position at his institute." Silence. "Then, that's a significant opportunity." "Yes. You should consider it." "I am considering it." More silence. "Is that why you've been avoiding me?" "I haven't." She stopped. "Maybe. Because you're thinking about leaving." "Because I'm thinking about what I want. And I can't think clearly when you're," she caught herself. "When I'm what?" "There. Even when you're not physically present, you're there. In every decision. Every thought." Her hand pressed against the glass. "I can't figure out what I want because everything is tangled up in what we're not supposed to want yet." 12 months, Alessandro said quietly. 357 days. "Stop counting." "I can't." "Alessandro. If you want the position, take it. If you want to leave, go. If you need distance, I'll give it to you." His voice roughened. "But don't run because you're afraid of what you feel. Run for the right reasons." "What are the right reasons?" "That's something only you can answer." After they hung up, Livia stood at the window for a long time watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, Alessandro was probably in his study, looking at the same city from a different angle. Both of them alone. Both of them waiting. Both of them wondering if waiting was wisdom or cowardice. The next morning, Morrison invited her to coffee. They sat in a small cafe near the university, discussing research methodologies and career trajectories. He was charming, accomplished, available in every way that mattered. The institute would give you freedom to pursue questions without political pressure, he was saying. Imagine having resources to investigate what you choose, not what municipalities assign. It sounds ideal. It could be. He paused. Livia, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I should be direct. I'm offering you this position because you're brilliant. But I'm also interested in getting to know you better. Personally. Livia set down her coffee. James. I know there's someone else. Or something else. I'm not blind. He smiled gently. But I also know that man's reputation. What he is. What he's done. You deserve someone who doesn't come with that weight. You don't know him. I know enough. Men like Alessandro Vieri don't change, Livia. They just find better camouflage. The words hit harder than they should. He's funding a $40 million cleanup of contamination he didn't create, she said quietly. He's made enemies to protect this project. He's sacrificed territory and profit to do the right thing. Or he's made a strategic investment in buying your trust. That's not. How do you know? Morrison leaned forward. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to offer perspective. A man like that doesn't fall in love. He acquires. He possesses. He controls. Livia stood. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Then ask yourself, why is he really doing this? What does he gain? She left without answering. But the question followed her. That night she broke down and called Marco. Ms. Romano. Is everything all right? I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. Always. Why is Alessandro really doing this? The remediation. The protection. All of it. Marco was quiet for a moment. Has someone suggested ulterior motives? Answer the question. The truth? At first I thought it was strategy. Eliminate competitors. Secure political capital. The usual calculus. He paused. But I've worked for Alessandro for 20 years. I've seen him negotiate, intimidate, destroy. I've never seen him sacrifice. What do you mean? He's lost 3 properties to rivals while focusing resources on your protection. He's walked away from 2 lucrative deals because they conflicted with remediation timelines. He's made himself vulnerable to men who would have been terrified of him 6 months ago. Marco's voice softened. Strategic investments have returns, Ms. Romano. This only has cost. The only thing he's gaining is the chance that when the 18 months end, you might choose him. That's all. That's everything. After hanging up, Livia sat in the dark, thinking about sacrifice and strategy, about trust and fear. About whether Morrison was right to warn her. Or whether he simply couldn't understand someone changing. The confrontation came 2 weeks later. Livia was at the site when she noticed Morrison talking with one of the Blackstone engineers, both of them reviewing her contamination maps with expressions that looked too analytical. Too questioning. She approached. Is there a problem? Morrison looked up, something shifting in his expression. Just reviewing methodology. The methodology you already peer-reviewed and approved. Additional scrutiny never hurts. The engineer looked uncomfortable. Ms. Romano, Dr. Morrison has raised some questions about sample collection timing, suggesting possible confirmation bias. Ice formed in Livia's stomach. Confirmation bias. Given your relationship with the funding source, Morrison said carefully, it's reasonable to wonder if unconscious bias affected sample selection. My relationship is professional. My samples are randomly collected according to standard protocols. And you know that because you reviewed my field notes. Field notes can be adjusted. The accusation hung in the air. Livia stepped closer, voice low and furious. You're questioning my integrity because I wouldn't take your job offer and date you. I'm questioning methodology that's unusually favorable to a man with motives to exaggerate contamination. The contamination is real. The samples are legitimate. And you're manufacturing doubt because, she stopped, realization hitting. You're working for them. The consortium. Morrison's expression didn't change. I'm working for scientific accuracy. You're working for the men who dumped this poison in the first place. She looked at the engineer. Check his funding sources. See who's paying for his institute. The engineer pulled out his tablet, typing quickly. His face paled. Dr. Morrison, your primary donor is Castellano Development. Silence. Morrison straightened. Many reputable firms donate to environmental research. Firms you then provide favorable expert testimony for. Livia felt sick. This entire time, the job offer, the personal interest, the friendship, it was all to compromise the assessment. You're being paranoid. Am I? Or am I finally seeing clearly? He turned to the engineer. Document this conversation. And remove Dr. Morrison from the site. He no longer has authorization to access project data. Livia, you're making a mistake. The mistake was trusting you. Morrison left under security escort. Livia stood at the contamination site, shaking with fury and betrayal. She'd been so careful, so principled, and she'd still almost been manipulated. Her phone rang. Alessandro. Marco just briefed me on Morrison. I handled it. I know. I'm calling to make sure you're all right. Something in his voice, the concern, the restraint, the absolute lack of I told, broke through her composure. He was sent to compromise me, she said. The job offer. The personal attention. All of it was strategy. Yes. You knew. I suspected. I had him investigated after his second visit to the site. But I couldn't tell you without proof. And I couldn't. He stopped. Couldn't what? Couldn't risk you thinking I was just trying to eliminate competition. Livia closed her eyes. Alessandro. You needed to see it yourself. To trust your own judgment. If I'd interfered, you'd always wonder if I was controlling you. So you just watched him circle me for weeks? I watched you handle it. Like you handle everything. With intelligence and integrity. His voice roughened. I've never been more proud. Or more furious that you had to face that alone. I wasn't alone. Your security was there. Your people documented everything. She paused. You were there. Even at a distance. Always. The admission hung between them across the phone line. 11 months, Livia whispered. 329 days. Alessandro, I need to tell you something. What? Morrison was wrong. About you. About this. She gripped the phone tighter. You're not trying to possess me. You're trying to prove you're worthy of me. And that's, her voice cracked. That's the most terrifying thing anyone's ever done. Why terrifying? Because it's working. Silence. Then very quietly, Livia. I have to go. The engineers need sign-off on the next excavation phase. She was crying now, trying to hide it. But I wanted you to know. You're not alone in this waiting. You never were. She hung up before he could respond. That evening, Alessandro stood in his study, staring at his phone like it held secrets. Marco entered without knocking. You look like someone who's just been given everything and nothing simultaneously. She admitted she feels it too. And we still have 11 months. So propose now. Marry her tomorrow. Life doesn't wait for arbitrary timelines. Alessandro shook his head. She needs to know this is real. That it survives beyond the crisis and the proximity. I have to prove it's not just danger and adrenaline. You've spent 15 million proving it already. Money isn't proof. Time is. Patience is. Choosing her over power, over territory, over every instinct I've had for 30 years. He looked at Marco. She's worth waiting for. And if someone else doesn't wait? Then I'll deal with it. But I won't pressure her. I won't rush her. I'll prove I'm worthy of her timeline. Marco studied his oldest friend, seeing something he'd never witnessed in 3 decades. Surrender. Not to defeat but to something stronger than control. You really love her, he said quietly. More than I knew was possible. The attacks intensified. Not against the remediation. That was too visible now, too documented. Instead they came at Alessandro's remaining holdings. Properties burned. Shipments disappeared. Partners received better offers from rivals. His empire was contracting. Livia watched it happen through news reports and Marco's careful updates. Watched Alessandro lose ground to men who'd once feared him. All because he was protecting her. She was reviewing financial projections when Marco appeared at her laboratory. He told me not to show you this, Marco said, placing a folder on her desk. But I think you deserve to see what it's actually costing him. Inside. Detailed accounting of Alessandro's losses. 8 properties sold at disadvantage. 12 partnerships dissolved. Estimated 60 million in revenue lost or redirected to security and remediation. He's bankrupting himself, Livia whispered. Not bankrupting, but significantly weakening. His position is vulnerable. Rivals are circling. In 6 months, if this continues, he'll lose majority control of his own organization. Why are you telling me this? Because he won't. Because he'll sacrifice everything and never tell you what it cost. Because I think you should know what your principles are worth to him. Marco's expression softened. He's choosing you over his empire, Ms. Romano. Every single day. After Marco left, Livia sat staring at the numbers. 60 million. His power base crumbling. All to prove himself worthy of a woman who demanded he wait 11 more months. She pulled out her phone. Stared at Alessandro's contact. Then set it down. This wasn't about making it easier for him. It was about making it real for both of them. Even if it destroyed him in the process. 7 months into remediation, the consortium made their final move. Not against Alessandro's businesses. Against Livia directly. She was leaving the site when 3 men appeared. Not threatening. Just blocking her path to her car. Professional. Come. Ms. Romano. A moment of your time. Her security detail materialized immediately, surrounding her. The men raised their hands, showing they were unarmed. We just want to talk, the lead man said. The gentlemen we represent have a final offer. Not interested. $5 million. Immediate transfer. All you have to do is certify that remediation is complete ahead of schedule. Livia stared. The remediation isn't complete. We're 7 months into an 18-month timeline. But it could be certified as functionally complete. Contamination reduced to acceptable levels. Ongoing monitoring sufficient. Acceptable levels still exceed safety thresholds. Only by narrow margins. Margins within expert interpretation. He stepped closer. Security tensed. Ms. Romano, we're offering you wealth. Independence. Freedom from all of this. Just certify the work is complete. So the consortium can develop the property before full remediation? So they can profit from land that's still contaminated. So everyone can move forward. The land is cleaner. You're compensated. The project ends. Everyone wins. Except the people who'll live near contamination that hasn't been fully removed. The man's expression hardened. We're being reasonable, Ms. Romano. Others might not be so patient. One of Alessandro's guards spoke into his radio. Within seconds, 2 additional vehicles arrived. The consortium's men retreated, hands still raised. Think about it. The offer expires in 72 hours. They left. Livia stood shaking, surrounded by security, watching them disappear. 72 hours. Then what? She didn't tell Alessandro about the threat. She told him about the offer. They met at the botanical gardens again. Neutral ground, public space, the place where this had all shifted months ago. 5 million, Alessandro repeated. They're desperate. Or confident I'll break. You won't. How do you know? He looked at her steadily. As I know you. You'd walk away from everything before you'd compromise your principles. Maybe I'm tired of principles costing everyone so much. Livia. 60 million, Alessandro. That's what Marco says you've lost protecting this project. Protecting me. She stepped closer. Your empire's crumbling. Your rivals are circling. And for what? So I can maintain a timeline that might destroy you before it's done. The timeline doesn't matter. It does. 10 months. That's what's left. 10 months of watching you sacrifice everything while I maintain professional distance because of some arbitrary agreement. It's not arbitrary. It's what you need. To be certain. I am certain. The words burst out before she could stop them. I'm certain that I'm falling in love with a man who's proving himself by losing everything. I'm certain that Morrison was wrong. You're not trying to possess me, you're destroying yourself to deserve me. I'm certain that these 10 months are killing us both. Alessandro went very still. What are you saying? I don't know. I don't know anything except that watching you suffer for me feels worse than any compromise ever could. I'm not suffering. I'm investing. In what? A woman who might not survive loving you. A future that might not exist if your enemies win. In us. In proving that I can be more than what I was. In becoming someone you'd choose freely. He moved closer. Livia, the money doesn't matter. The power doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is earning your trust completely. Not through pressure or timing or circumstance, but through patience. And if patience costs you everything, then I'll start over with nothing but you. And consider it the best trade I ever made. Livia felt tears on her face. You're impossible. I'm in love. It's surprisingly similar. She laughed despite everything. Despite the danger and the sacrifice and the 10 months still remaining. Alessandro. Don't. He stopped her with a look. Don't change the agreement because you feel guilty. Don't compromise your timeline because I'm losing territory. Do this right. For both of us. But. 10 months, he said firmly. 304 days. I can wait. I will wait. And when that time is done, you'll know beyond any doubt that what I feel is real. I already know. Then 10 more months won't change anything except making it permanent. The 72 hours passed. Livia refused the offer. The response came at 3 a.m. Fire at Alessandro's flagship restaurant. No casualties, the building was empty but total loss. Millions in damages. Insurance complicated by suspected arson. Marco called her at dawn. He's fine. Everyone's safe. But this is a message. What kind of message? That they're done negotiating. Done waiting. They're going to systematic destruction until one of you breaks. Livia closed her eyes. I need to see him. He's at the restaurant site. She found Alessandro standing in the ruins, suit jacket discarded, ash on his white shirt. The building was a skeleton, smoke still rising from debris. Around him, investigators photographed evidence, documented destruction. Alessandro. He turned. Exhausted. But when he saw her, something softened. You shouldn't be here, he said. Neither should you. It's a crime scene. It's my restaurant. Was my restaurant. Livia moved closer, navigating rubble. When she reached him, she did something she'd never done before. She took his hand. Alessandro looked down at their joined hands like she'd performed magic. Livia. How many more? She asked quietly. How many more properties will they destroy? How much more will you lose before this ends? As much as it takes. That's not acceptable. It's not negotiable either. They can burn every building I own. I'll still be here. Still protecting you. Still waiting. She gripped his hand tighter. I can't watch you destroyed because of me. You're not doing this to me. They are. And I'm choosing how to respond. He lifted their joined hands, pressing them against his chest. This is my choice, Livia. My sacrifice. My proof. Don't take that from me. Why does proving yourself have to cost so much? Because what I'm trying to earn is worth everything. They stood in the ruins, hands clasped, surrounded by destruction that should have broken him but somehow only made him more certain. 9 months, Livia whispered. 275 days. I know. Will you survive them? Will you? She leaned her forehead against his shoulder. The first real physical contact they'd shared. He went rigid, then slowly wrapped his free arm around her. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the wreckage, while investigators worked around them and the city woke to another day. I should go, she finally said. I know. But neither of them moved. Alessandro. Yes. Thank you. For waiting. For choosing this. For being stubborn enough to prove everyone wrong about you. I'm not proving them wrong. I'm proving you right. For believing I could be better. She pulled away slowly, immediately missing his warmth. Don't let them destroy you. They can't. The only person who could destroy me is you. And you won't. How do you know? He smiled, tired but genuine. Because you love me too. Even if you won't say it yet. Livia opened her mouth to deny it. Couldn't. So she left without answering, knowing he was right. Knowing 9 months suddenly felt impossibly long and terrifyingly short simultaneously. The consortium's attacks continued. Systematic. Professional. Designed to cost money and morale without crossing into overt warfare. Alessandro responded by contracting his operations, consolidating power, protecting what mattered. His empire shrank. His influence waned. Men who'd once begged for his attention now scheduled meetings with rivals. He seemed entirely unbothered. "You're actually enjoying this?" Marco observed one evening reviewing the latest losses. "Enjoying is strong. But there's freedom in it. Freedom. In having one priority. One goal. For 30 years I've juggled territories and partnerships and profit margins. Now I have one thing to protect." Alessandro looked at the reports without emotion. "It's remarkably simple. It's remarkably expensive. And remarkably worth it." Marco set down the files. "The remediation is on schedule. 8 months complete. 10 months remaining. You're over 60% done." "I'm aware. Which means you're close to having nothing left except her. What happens if she still walks away?" Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. "Then I'll have spent 15 million and an empire proving I could be worthy of her. And I'll still be more than I was when I started. That's not much of a contingency plan. It's the only plan that matters." 8 months into remediation, the consortium made their final desperate move. They went after Livia's career. Anonymous complaints to her licensing board. Accusations of ethical violations. Suggestions of data falsification. All carefully worded, professionally presented, impossible to trace. Livia received the formal investigation notice on a Wednesday. She was being audited. Every assessment she'd ever conducted. Every methodology she'd ever used. Her professional reputation under microscopic review. The investigation would take months. Her license was suspended pending outcome. She called Alessandro from her apartment, voice shaking. "They're destroying my career. I heard. I'm so sorry." "Sorry? This is because of you. Because of this project. Because I wouldn't." She stopped. "Wouldn't what?" "Wouldn't stay away from you." Silence. Then very carefully, "Do you regret it?" "Did she?" "Her career suspended. Her reputation questioned. Her future uncertain. All because she'd fallen in love with a man who'd been brave enough to change for her." "No," she whispered. "I just don't know how to fight this." "You don't have to. I'll handle it." "Alessandro. I'm calling a press conference tomorrow. I'm releasing the complete dossier on the consortium. Every name. Every bribe. Every illegal dumping permit. The criminal evidence I gave you months ago." His voice hardened. "They want to destroy your reputation? I'll destroy theirs. Permanently. That will make you vulnerable. They'll retaliate. Let them try. I'm done being cautious. I'm done letting them attack what's mine. I'm not yours. You are. Maybe not officially. Maybe not yet. But you're mine, Livia. And I protect what's mine. Consequences be damned." The possessiveness should frighten her. Felt like safety. "This could destroy you," she said. "Or it could free us both." The press conference happened the next morning. Alessandro stood in front of a dozen cameras and spoke with devastating calm. He named names. Presented evidence. Outlined decades of environmental crimes. Implicated powerful men who'd thought themselves untouchable. The city erupted. Within hours, federal investigations launched. Grand juries convened. Arrest warrants issued. The consortium's empire began to crumble much faster than Alessandro's ever had. But there was a cost. That evening, Marco appeared at Livia's apartment with 6 additional guards. "What's happening?" she asked. "Alessandro's receiving credible death threats. Courthouse steps. Tomorrow afternoon. When he testifies to the grand jury." Marco's expression was grim. "We're moving you to a secure location until this is over." "And Alessandro?" "Is refusing protection. Says he won't hide from consequences." Livia grabbed her coat. "Take me to him. Ms. Romano." Now. She found Alessandro in his study, alone, reviewing testimony notes. He looked up when she entered, surprised. "Livia. You shouldn't be here. Marco said you're refusing protection." "The threats are against me. Not you. Don't be stupid. I'm being practical. If they kill me, you're free. The consortium's exposure stands regardless. The cleanup continues. You get your life back." Livia crossed the room and did something she'd promised herself she wouldn't do for 9 more months. She kissed him. Alessandro froze in shock. Then his hands came up, cradling her face. kissing her back with months of restrained longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. Livia. If you die, I don't get my life back. I lose the only future I want. She gripped his shirt. We had an agreement. 9 months left. But I'm changing the terms. To what? You take protection. You survive this. You let me stand with you instead of watching from a distance. Her voice cracked. And when this is over, when the consortium is destroyed and the land is clean and you're safe, you ask me properly. And I say yes. Alessandro stared at her, hands still cradling her face. Are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything. I love you. I've loved you since the botanical gardens. Since you proved you could choose principle over power. Since you waited when everything in you wanted to claim me. She kissed him again, softer. So survive tomorrow. And then claim me properly. 9 months. Can go to hell. I don't need more time. I need you alive and safe and mine. Alessandro pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I've waited so long to hear you say it. Then promise me you'll wait 9 more hours. Until tomorrow is done and you've testified and survived and we can start actually being together. I promise. Say it again. I promise I'll survive tomorrow. And every day after. For you. They held each other in the study, the timeline abandoned, the waiting over, both of them finally certain. The next day Alessandro testified for 6 hours. Federal prosecutors. Grand jury. Criminal defense attorneys attacking his credibility. He presented evidence methodically. Answered questions honestly. Implicated himself in minor violations to establish his willingness to tell the whole truth. By evening, 12 indictments were issued. The consortium's leadership arrested. Their operations frozen. Their empire dismantled. Alessandro emerged from the courthouse under heavy security, exhausted but victorious. Livia waited at the car, surrounded by guards watching him approach. When he reached her, he stopped. It's done, he said. I heard. 12 arrests. Complete shutdown of their operations. The remediation is secure. Your career will be cleared. The investigation was based on their false complaints. Once they're prosecuted, your license will be reinstated. I know. You're free, Livia. Free to leave this. To take that institute position. To build your career without being associated with me. She stepped closer. Is that what you want? I want you happy. If that means leaving. She kissed him in front of a dozen cameras, guards, and curious onlookers. Alessandro responded immediately, arms around her, lifting her slightly off the ground, kissing her like she was oxygen. When they broke apart, Livia smiled against his mouth. I'm not going anywhere, she said. The timeline was my attempt to protect myself. To make sure this was real. She touched his face. But watching you sacrifice everything proved it months ago. I just needed to be brave enough to admit it. You're the bravest person I know. Then ask me. Alessandro set her down carefully. Looked around at the guards, the cameras, the chaos of the courthouse steps. Then he dropped to one knee. The world seemed to stop. Livia Romano. You walked into my life with nothing but truth and refused to leave until I became worthy of it. You changed me. Challenged me. Made me want to be better than everything I'd been. I don't have much left to offer. Most of my empire is gone. But what's left is yours. My protection. My loyalty. My love. All of it. Forever. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Marry me. Build a life with me. Let me spend every remaining day proving I was worth waiting for. Livia looked at him. This powerful man kneeling on courthouse steps, offering her everything he was and everything he'd become. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. He slid the ring on her finger. Simple, elegant, perfect, and stood pulling her into his arms. Around them cameras flashed. Guards smiled. The city watched. And for the first time in months, Livia felt complete. 6 months later. The remediation finished ahead of schedule. 17 months total. Final testing showed contamination levels below detection limits. The land was clean. Certified. Ready for development into the public park the city council had approved. Livia stood at the former contamination site, watching children play on new grass, families picnic near restored wetlands. What had been toxic waste was now community space. What had been death was now life. Arms wrapped around her from behind. Alessandro rested his chin on her shoulder, hands settling over her still flat stomach. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better. The morning sickness is finally easing." "And the wedding plans?" "Complicated. Your mother wants formal. Mine wants intimate. I want eloped." He laughed, the sound rumbling through her. "We can't elope. Too many people have stakes in this wedding." "Since when do you care about other people's opinions?" "Since I married someone who taught me that community matters. That reputation built on truth matters. That doing things properly matters." Livia turned in his arms, looking up at him. "You really have changed. You changed me." He kissed her softly. "Made me want to build something sustainable instead of something powerful." "And was it worth it?" Alessandro looked around. At the park. At the families. At the land healed and the future growing inside the woman he loved. Every single sacrifice. Every dollar. Every loss. He smiled. "I'd do it all again tomorrow. Even the waiting? Especially the waiting. It proved we were real." Livia rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Around them the city moved. Life continued. But here, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. "I love you," she said. "I know. You tell me constantly. I'm making up for lost time." "Then keep going. I'll never get tired of hearing it." They stood together as the sun set, on land that had been poisoned and was now pure, having both survived the transformation. Having both become more than they were. Having both discovered that some chemistry can't be forced, only cultivated with patience, sacrifice, and the kind of love that changes everything. 3 months later. They married in the botanical gardens where everything had shifted. Small ceremony. Close family. Marco as best man. Livia's mother crying throughout. Livia wore simple ivory. Alessandro wore black. Both of them radiant. The vows were traditional except for one addition. Alessandro looked at Livia and said, "You taught me that real power isn't taking what you want. It's earning what you're given. I promise to earn your trust every day. To choose you over empire. To build sustainability instead of dominance. To love you with the same patience you showed me." Livia's vows were simpler. "You proved that people can change. That love is stronger than fear. That waiting for the right thing is better than rushing toward the wrong one. I promise to challenge you. To believe in you. To build a future where our children inherit clean land and honest love." When the officiant pronounced them married, Alessandro kissed her like he'd waited lifetimes for this moment. As he had. 2 years later. The former Vieri Holdings contamination site had become Romano Park. Named not for Livia but for her father. The man who'd died when she was 8, who'd never known his daughter would grow up to heal poisoned earth and change a powerful man's heart. Livia stood at the dedication ceremony, 7 months pregnant with their second child, their daughter Sofia asleep against Alessandro's shoulder. The mayor was speaking about environmental restoration and community transformation. About how one woman's integrity had sparked citywide reform. About how the cleanup had inspired 12 other remediation projects across the region. But Livia wasn't listening to the speech. She was watching Alessandro with their daughter. The way he adjusted her carefully so she wouldn't wake. The way he smiled when she stirred. The way this man who'd once ruled through fear now led through sacrifice. He caught her looking and mouthed, "I love you." She mouthed back, "I know." After the ceremony they walked through the park together. Sofia woke and demanded to see the ducks in the restored wetlands. Alessandro carried her on his shoulders, pointing out birds, explaining ecosystems with surprising accuracy. "You've been reading environmental science texts," Livia observed. "I want to understand your world. It's our world now. Even better." They reached the bench where a plaque had been installed. Neither of them had known about it until today. It read, "Where poison became purity. Where empire became love. Where patience proved more powerful than force." Dedicated to Alessandro and Livia Vieri, who proved that transformation is always possible. Livia felt tears on her face. Alessandro wrapped his free arm around her, Sofia giggling between them. "Worth it?" she asked quietly. "Every sacrifice. Every dollar. Every moment of waiting." He kissed her temple. "I'd burn 100 empires for you. You kind of did. And built something better in the ashes." She leaned into him, one hand on her pregnant belly, watching their daughter point excitedly at ducks swimming in water that had once been toxic. "What are you thinking?" Alessandro asked. "That Morrison was wrong. That my mother was right. That waiting was worth it." She looked up at him. "That you're the most stubborn, impossible, wonderful man I've ever known." High praise from someone who once threatened me with federal intervention. "I never threatened. I presented facts." "You terrified me." "Good. You needed terrifying." Sophia demanded to be put down, running toward the ducks with the fearless energy of a toddler who'd never known danger. Alessandro and Livia followed slowly, hands clasped. Around them, families played in the park. Children ran on clean grass. Life flourished where death had been buried. And two people who'd found each other across power and principle walked together, building a future their children would inherit. Clean land. Honest love. Sustainable legacy. Everything they'd fought for. Everything they'd waited for. Everything they'd become together. That night, Alessandro stood in the nursery of their home watching Sophia sleep. The house was modest compared to his former properties. But it was theirs. Built on land purchased legally, financed through legitimate businesses, filled with love instead of fear. Livia appeared in the doorway, changed into comfortable clothes, one hand on her belly. "She's asleep," Alessandro whispered. Finally. She was wound up from the ceremony. "She loves the ducks. She loves everything. She has your fearlessness. And your stubbornness." Livia smiled, moving to stand beside him. Dangerous combination. The best things are. They watched their daughter sleep for a moment. Then Alessandro led Livia to their bedroom, helping her settle comfortably with pillows supporting her back. "How's the research position?" he asked, lying beside her. "Wonderful. The institute gave me complete autonomy. I'm designing contamination assessment protocols that will become regional standard." Morrison's institute? Different one. Better funding. No ulterior motives. She paused. "Though I heard Morrison lost his license. Turns out his peer review business was entirely fraudulent. Karma works slowly but thoroughly. Like soil remediation." Alessandro laughed, pulling her close. "You really do see the world through environmental metaphors. And you see it through power dynamics." "Not anymore. Now I see it through love dynamics. Completely different calculus." She turned to face him. "Do you miss it? The empire. The influence. The fear." He considered this honestly. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity. The clear hierarchies. The immediate obedience." He touched her face. "But then I remember what that life cost me. What I never had. Connection. Trust. Real partnership. Someone who challenges me to be better instead of just obeying. That's very evolved of you. I'm a work in progress. Aren't we all?" They lay together in comfortable silence. Outside the city moved. Inside safety and warmth and love. Alessandro. Thank you." "For what?" "For waiting. For changing. For proving everyone wrong about you." She paused. "For choosing me over everything else." He kissed her softly. "It wasn't a choice. It was the only option that mattered. Still. Thank you. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving. For believing I could be more than my worst actions. For loving me anyway. I love you because of who you became. Not despite who you were." That's a very generous interpretation. It's an accurate one. The man who waited 18 months proved he was worthy. The man who sacrificed his empire proved he was serious. The man who holds our daughter and reads environmental science and builds sustainable businesses. That's the man I married. The past is just foundation. Alessandro held her closer, feeling their second child move between them. "I love our life," he said quietly. "Even though it's ordinary? It's not ordinary. It's extraordinary. Just in different ways than before. No more power. No more empire. Just family. And work. And clean land. And a future worth building." He smiled against her hair. "Turns out that's more than enough." 5 years later. Sophia was 7. Her brother Marco, named for Alessandro's consigliere, now retired and teaching at university, was 4. And Livia was reviewing assessment data while very pregnant with their third child. Alessandro entered her home office with coffee, decaf as required, and kissed the top of her head. You're supposed to be resting. I'm sitting. This counts as resting. You're working. I'm consulting. Different thing. He looked at the screen. Contamination assessment for the old industrial district? The city council approved my proposal. We're doing comprehensive testing of every property. 15-year remediation timeline. Public health priority. She looked up at him. It's based on the model we developed for your original site. Our original site. Yours technically. You funded it. And you designed it. And together we proved it works. He sat on the edge of her desk. How much will this cost the city? 200 million over 15 years. Alessandro whistled. That's significant investment. In sustainability. In health. In proving that short-term profit isn't worth long-term poison. She smiled. Someone taught me that immediate power isn't as valuable as lasting change. Someone very wise, clearly. Someone very stubborn. Also accurate. Livia saved her work and stood stretching her back. Alessandro immediately moved to support her. I'm pregnant, not invalid. You're 8 months pregnant and working too hard. Says the man who just closed his 4th legitimate development deal this month. Legitimate being the operative word. No toxic dumping. No bribed inspectors. Just honest construction on clean land. He guided her to the couch. Amazing how much easier business is when you're not constantly covering up crimes. Revolutionary concept. They sat together, Alessandro's hand on her belly, feeling their 3rd child kick. Boy or girl? He asked. We agreed not to find out. I'm impatient. You waited 18 months for me. You can wait 2 more weeks. That was different. You were worth waiting for. And this baby isn't? Fine. 2 weeks. But I'm counting days. Livia laughed, leaning into him. You always are. The baby was a girl. They named her Terra. Latin for earth. Because some legacies are about what you heal, not what you conquer. Because transformation starts with one person willing to change. Because love built on patience is stronger than power built on fear. And because sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is kneel. 10 years after the first meeting, Alessandro stood at Romano Park on a cold January evening. Alone as he'd requested. It was the anniversary. 10 years since Livia had walked into that restaurant with her black envelope and her data and her absolute refusal to be intimidated. 10 years since his world had changed. He heard footsteps. Turned to find Livia approaching, bundled against the cold, smiling. The kids, he asked. With my mother. She's feeding them too much sugar and letting them stay up late. Perfect. Livia moved to stand beside him, looking out over the park. Lights twinkled in bare trees. Ice glittered on the wetlands. Families had been here earlier. Evidence in the snow angels and sled tracks. Why did you want to meet here? She asked. Because this is where it all started. Where you showed me that some things can't be buried or burned or threatened away. The contamination. Truth. Principle. You. He turned to face her fully. 10 years ago I thought power meant controlling everything. Making people afraid. Taking what I wanted. And now I know power means building something worth protecting. Creating legacy worth inheriting. Loving someone brave enough to change you. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Livia's breath caught. Alessandro. I know we're already married. I know this is symbolic. But 10 years ago you walked into my life and demanded I prove myself worthy. So I want to ask again. Properly. After a decade of proof. He opened the box. Inside a new ring. Simple band engraved with coordinates. The exact location where they stood. Livia Romano Vieri. You've given me 3 children, a sustainable empire, a clean conscience and a reason to be better every day. Will you marry me again? Choose me again? Build the next decade with me? Livia was crying. We're already married. So marry me again. Renew vows. Remind me that this is real. It's real. Then say yes. She laughed through tears. Yes. Always yes. He slid the new ring beside the old one. She wrapped her arms around him, kissing him in the cold, in the park built on land they'd healed together. When they broke apart, Livia looked up at him. Thank you, she said. For the ring. For everything. For changing. For waiting. For proving that love is stronger than fear and patience is more powerful than force. She touched his face. For becoming the man I always believed you could be. I'm still working on it. We both are. That's the point. They stood together as snow began to fall, covering clean earth, building towards spring. Two people who'd found each other across impossible odds. Who'd built something sustainable from ruins. Who'd proven that transformation is always possible when you're brave enough to wait for it. The end. Where poison became purity. Where empire became love. Where the land remembered and two hearts learned that some things are worth waiting for. He owned the city, but she controlled the truth beneath it. And together they built something neither could have created alone. Legacy, love, life, clean earth, honest empire, sustainable future. Everything they fought for. Everything they became. Everything that matters.